I knew our product was awesome. I knew that people who bought our product loved it. So keeping those two things in mind, I knew that my biggest challenge was to figure out how to get it into the hands of people who were going to think our product was awesome.
Hey, my name is Felix Tia, and I'm the host of Shopify Masters, a weekly podcast powered by Shopify, the easiest way to sell online, in person, and anywhere in between. Each week, we invite entrepreneurs like you to share what they've learned growing successful e-commerce businesses. In this episode, you'll learn how a Thai police officer gave him his business idea, how to overcome potential customers that think your product is weird, and how to find a marketing agency that is aligned with your interests. Before we get into our show, I wanted to take a moment to talk about the Shopify App Store. Shopify apps help you easily customize and add features to your store to make it your own. The App Store hosts over 4,000 apps built specifically for Shopify businesses. Shopify developers all over the world built these apps to help you save time and unlock a range of new features, from showing your Instagram feed on your store to offering loyalty rewards and more. Check out shopify.com/app store for the latest Shopify apps. Today, I'm joined by Brian Davis from Teddy Stratford. Teddy Stratford created the Zip Fit shirt, a patented athletic cut button down that zips and fits closer without gapping between the buttons, and was started in 2014 and based out of New York. Welcome, Brian.
Thanks, Felix. I have to tell you, over the years, I've been listening to your show. Your voice is very familiar to me, and I've gotten lots of tips from listening. And so being on the show as a guest is a true milestone for me. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, awesome. I'm so glad that the show has helped you out, and I'm glad that you're here to kind of pass it on. So I want to talk about the idea behind the business, because you told us a funny story, not too much detail. So I'd love to hear details about how getting pulled over by the police helped you come up with the idea behind the business.
Yeah. Let's see. So I was in Thailand. I had kind of run to Thailand to get away from a hectic business situation. I had opened and closed a restaurant in Miami, and I needed a break, but I was broke after the business. And I ran away to Thailand, where things are less expensive. And so one day I'm driving my friend's car through Bangkok, and this police officer steps out into the middle of the road and he motions me to the side of the road. So I pull over. And as he's approaching the car, and this may sound strange, but I notice that his uniform looks really cool. And specifically, the shirt was this slim fit shirt. And even though he wasn't particularly fit himself, he looked really sharp. He looked really good in the shirt. And so I'm thinking, I got to have one of these shirts. And so as he comes up to the window, my friend who's riding shotgun is Thai. She's got to translate the whole conversation. And she says to me, he says to take 200 baht, which is about $7, fold it up, put it behind your license, and hand him your license. And so I'm thinking, I said, tell him I'll give him 400 baht if he tells me where I can get one of these uniforms. And so the guy, of course, agreed to that. And so I folded up 400 baht, put it behind my driver's license, handed it to him. And he pulled out his notepad. And instead of writing me a ticket, he wrote the address to his tailor down on the notepad. So it turns out the tailor was was really right around the corner from where we got pulled over. So we go into the tailor. And again, there's no English spoken at the tailor. So my friend is working as translator. And the guy kind of sizes me up and realizes that I don't look Thai. So he thought, well, this guy can't impersonate a police officer. So yeah, I'll make you a police uniform. And so he's going through kind of all the paces of, do you want cuffs on your pants? Do you want this? Do you want that? And he gets to this point where my friend can't translate. He says, do you want buttons or do you want something else? And I said, what do you mean something else? And so the guy goes into the back and he brings out two example shirts. One of them is kind of a regular button down. And the other one, it looks like a button down, but there's actually a zipper behind the buttons. And I'd never seen this before. So it struck me as this is interesting. And I said, I'll take the zipper. And so I placed the order, and about a week later, I go in to pick up my police uniform, and I'm trying it on in the fitting room, and the pants fit great. But I'm really disappointed as I put the shirt on because it's so tight. It was like a wetsuit almost, that tight. And I was kind of bummed out because I was looking forward to wearing my new shirt when I got back to the United States. And it was so tight that there was no way that I could wear it as anything other than like a Halloween costume, which it actually is what I did that Halloween. But I look at myself in the mirror after I've zipped this shirt up. And one of the things that I noticed was this thing's so tight, but there's no gaps between the buttons. And this is actually a problem that I had wearing slim fit shirts, is the gapping between the buttons, especially at the chest. And I thought, that's why these guys look so good in their shirts, because they can wear closer fitting shirts and they don't look like they're busting out of them because of the gaps between the buttons. So that was kind of like the seed of the idea. And, I brought the shirt back to New York, and I showed it to one of my best friends who worked at Bloomingdale's. And he'd been buying men's dress shirts for years, and he had never seen this before. And he liked the idea. And so I worked with Bloomingdale's almost immediately to develop a zipper shirt for their store line. And we released the first kind of zipper shirt. It was basically a replica of the Thai police shirt, but less fitted. And we released this shirt in I think 7 different Bloomingdale's stores. We made about 1,000 of them. And it was very poor selling project like that. I guess apparently they had to sell about 50% of them on deep discount. And it was such a bad selling item that they did not reorder. So the good things, the thing that came from that failure was I got to see why it was that the shirt didn't sell. And there were lots of different reasons. One of the things was that the manufacturer had used kind of a cheap zipper. And so this is kind of like the way that you close the shirt. You can't skimp on the zipper. You have to have a good zipper. And then the other thing was that there was something wrong with the center placket that didn't keep it covering the zipper. And so when you zipped it up, if you're wearing the shirt, you could see the zipper. And then the other thing, this is the most important thing, was that the item got lost in the entire collection of men's stuff among their cashmere sweaters and their pants and this and that. And nobody was there to tell the story or put the shirt into context. And so it's kind of like, it was just a thing, and it disappeared. So I kind of, now it has to be said that this was really kind of a side project for me. So, at the time I had moved back to New York from Miami after I closed the restaurant, and was working on this tech product, and pushing that forward. But in the meantime, like, that wasn't making any money. So I was also working as a bartender and a DJ. So I had a lot of, I didn't have a lot of time to work on it, but I just kind of kept pushing it forward. And one day I discovered this custom shirt maker called Seago Custom Shirts. They were across the hallway in a building in New York from where I was getting my skates sharpened. I'm a hockey player. And I walk in, and I met the owner. His name's Carl Goldberg. And I told him about the shirt, and he thought it was interesting. And then I brought him a sample of the shirt, and he agreed to make me a prototype, because what I wanted to do is I wanted to make a regular looking button down or button up shirt with a zipper and see whether or not that worked. Because previously all we had done is made, I had a police shirt, and then I had the Bloomingdale's shirt was kind of a police shirt looking thing. And I think it's a good idea to pause here and just say, in addition to Carl, who had been in the shirt business for 30 some odd years. And my friend at Bloomingdale's, who had also been in the shirt business for over a decade, neither of them had ever seen this before, and it struck them as a good idea. But in fact, for years, for decades actually, police uniforms and security shirts, even in the United States, had been made as with a zipper shirt option. So this zipper was not something exclusive to the Thai police department, nor to the tailor who I had met, but it was being sold by uniform shirts all over the United States, and I would assume different countries around the world. So it was not an idea that was actually owned by anyone. And so anyway, Carl and I made the first prototype, and it worked. It was great. It looked like a regular button-down shirt, and then that was kind of the beginning of Teddy Stratford. I had a roommate at the time who also really liked the idea. And he and I had come up with the name for the brand. And then he and I worked on the logo, and we kind of pushed things forward. He put some money in, I put some money in. And I guess it took us a couple of years at least from the time that we had the first prototype made to the time that we launched our Kickstarter campaign. So when I say that we launched in 2014, that was actually when we launched our Kickstarter campaign. But I had been working on it and pushing it forward just a little by little for a few years before that.
Wow. So first of all, thank you for walking us through that. That's an amazing story. It started off with bribery into potential police impersonation, all the way to the failures of Bloomingdale's and the learnings from there. So I want to unpack this a bit. So I think, the first thing that I want to talk about is that it is kind of, you hinted at this, which is that it's really exciting to me that there's just so many opportunities to take ideas or products that are just everywhere that just haven't been applied to other use cases, right? From uniforms to again, you mentioned that you spoke to people that have been in the industry for a long time, decades of time, and they had never seen this, even though it's not the same industry. It's not menswear or fashion, but it's right next door to it. They're making clothing, and it's just that they're just use cases that have not been taken, ideas that cannot be applied. So I think that the first thing I want to ask you is that how did you recognize that this was a business opportunity, that you liked it, and what made you say, you know what, maybe other people like it? Probably leading into Bloomingdale's, even though that wasn't a quote unquote success by typical metrics, you still knew that there was a chance here to make this thing bigger than just a tailored shirt for yourself.
Yeah. Okay. So that is a good question, and I think what the answer is, you have to look at what problem does the product solve. And for me, I had already started wearing slim fit shirts, and I'm in relatively good shape. I'm semi-athletic. I'm not a great athlete, but I'm athletic. And so I have a bit of a broader chest and a slimmer waist because I stay in shape, and there are a lot of people like me. And the problem with regular slim fit shirts and with, actually the way that almost every brand is made is that they want their product to fit as many people as possible. And so what they do is they get a fit model who's a person of average proportions, and then they build their shirt around this average proportioned person. And in doing that, they're able to fit as many people as possible. So you've got an athletic framed person fits inside of the shirt. Someone who's a few pounds also fits inside of that shirt. But what happens when an athletic guy puts on a shirt like this is if it fits him in the chest, it's generally too baggy around the waist, and you get that extra kind of billowing waist situation. And then if it fits him in the waist, it's usually too tight at the chest, and you get what we refer to as pec gap, which is the gap that opens between your buttons right at the chest. And so the athletic guy not being able to find a shirt that fits him, because of that, we call that the athlete's dilemma. And so on the surface, the zipper itself solves this problem. So you can wear a closer fitting shirt, even if it's not tight. When you move in a shirt without a zipper, if it's fitting close, there's always a gap that opens at the chest. The zipper solves that problem. But in addition to that, we decided to approach the fit, which is kind of our secret sauce. So you come for the zipper and then you stay for the fit. We decided to approach the fit in a different way from the way that really any brand, as far as I know, has approached the fit. And we started with the philosophy that the shirt is a frame around your torso. And so remember, I talked about the building it around average proportions. So when you put an average proportion frame around someone's torso, it makes them look average. So we thought, what happens if you take a quote unquote ideal proportioned frame and put that around someone's torso? And so what we did was we looked at, I started doing some research on men's bodies and the way they have been depicted by artists over the centuries. And I came across this concept called the golden ratio. And all of these artists were building their statues and doing their paintings and so on and so forth, according to the golden ratio, which was kind of like a shoulders, chest to waist to arms ratio. Apparently with this golden ratio, that ratio is pleasing to the eye. And so they kind of built their statues and their art around it. And then I started looking at modern day men who are considered to have good bodies. And these guys, when you looked at the ratio of their upper bodies, it's very similar to the way that artists were depicting like a hero's body back in the Renaissance. And so we came up with a ratio and built our shirt around that ratio. And then we kind of took that shirt and started trying it on different, mostly athletic guys. So I play hockey. I tried it on my teammates. I also was doing CrossFit at the time, and I would try it on guys at the gym. And I would take notes about like what doesn't fit, what does fit, what works, what doesn't work. And we would change the shirt according to these notes and then bring out the next version and try it on guys and stuff like that. So we kind of ended up at this final ratio that every one of our shirts, we call it our golden ratio, every one of our shirts is built around this golden ratio, regardless of if it's an extra small up to the double XL, it all has this same ratio. And the result of this is that it fits athletic guys almost like it's custom made. We have people who leave reviews on our site that say, I've never been able to find a shirt that fits like this. Even custom shirts don't fit like this, and so on and so forth. But what it also does is it takes a guy who's not in incredible shape, and because of the shape of the shirt, it makes him look more athletic. And so we also get reviews that say, like, I look like I'm in great shape, and I'm not. So this is kind of where we started and what we've grown on. What are the zipper and the fit?
Yeah, so I want to talk about that experience at Bloomingdale's, and that was kind of a stepping stone before you got to the point where you understood how to perfect this product more. Now, you had mentioned that you had a friend that worked there, and then all of a sudden you had 1,000 of your shirts in their stores, which is a big accomplishment in itself, and which is again also it's kind of a big leap. Like, what happened along the way? How was that? How were you able to arrange that?
So, he recognized it as an interesting idea. He liked the way that the shirt functioned, the one that I had functioned. And he just said, hey, I just want to test it out and see if it works. And would you consult with so they have a factory that makes their dress shirts. Would you consult with our factory and they'll make a zipper shirt and we'll release it. And, basically, I got paid a very small commission off of what was made. And he said, it'll be a good way to test out this concept and see if it works. So the only answer I could come up with was yes.
Yeah, I think just having a interesting problem that solves a real problem, I think can get you very far in opening doors. Is kind of what I'm hearing from this.
So, what's interesting is that one of the reasons why I think it failed is that the people who were selling the product on the floor didn't understand that it actually solved the problem. So there was a disconnect there and a lack of context.
Yeah, I was going to get into that next. I think you had mentioned that once you looked at it closer, though, there were also improvements that you wanted to make on the product after it didn't sell well. How did you discover these things where you wanted to make these? So it sounds like two problems. Right? The product could be better, but then also the way it can be sold, the context, the explanation of why this is solving a problem. That's like a kind of a marketing problem that you also had to solve. But when it came to the product first, how did you discover that, okay, the zipper wasn't high quality, it wasn't covering the zipper well? Like, how did you discover these things that you wanted to improve on the product in the next kind of iteration?
They gave me a few samples from their production run, and I was wearing them myself, and I was, washing them, and then I realized that the zipper was sticky, and then also that front placket thing that I was talking about, there was a very soft inner lining, which was allowing the placket to pull back and expose the zipper while you were wearing it. So those were two things that I identified right away. Those were the two main fixes that came from the Bloomingdale's thing.
And were you confident that these were fixes that other people cared about, or did you have to kind of ask customers what they didn't like about the product? How did you go off of your own kind of instinct about, hey, this can be improved in a certain way, or were there kind of steps to figuring out how to make this product better?
Yeah, so it was really kind of instinctual, or it was kind of like what I noticed when I had the product. So I wasn't able to talk to any of their customers because they were Bloomingdale's customers, and they didn't, I didn't even think to ask them to put me in touch with someone who had purchased the shirt.
Yeah. So now the shirt's obviously a novel concept for again menswear fashion, people that are wearing these kind of shirts for fashion as a uniform. Did people think it was weird? Did they think like this is a weird thing, like this is new, which makes them think maybe this is weird, and did you have to overcome that at all?
Yeah, actually, that is probably the biggest stumbling block that we hit. So for me, I was just excited that I discovered something new. I thought it was cool, and so on and so forth. It was difficult at first for me to understand how someone not myself would see it at first. And so, yeah, and it's strange because our shirt, when you look at it being worn properly, it looks just like a regular shirt, although I would argue that it fits a lot better. But it's totally different because it has a zipper. And so there's a perception when it's taken out of context that this is like a clip-on tie, like it's a shortcut or a cheat. Some people see it and they say, what are people so lazy that they can't button up their shirts nowadays? And so it is a challenge at first. Another thing that people say is like, oh, this is a great shirt for a stripper, which is, probably true, but but bringing it into context. Okay, yes, the shirt has a zipper, but it's not because it's a cheat like a clip-on tie or Velcro shoes. It's not because people are too lazy to button up their shirts. It's because it actually solves a problem. And so if our messaging talks about that problem, shows the problem, and shows the solution, the perception of it is a little bit different.
Yeah. Now, so talk to us about how you kind of bridge that gap once you go to Kickstarter and you go direct to consumer, where you can control the context, the messaging, making sure they understand the differentiator. What are some things that you do tactically to make sure that you get the point across that this is not just a regular shirt, but solves a very specific problem?
Well, one of the things that we knew that we needed to do from the get-go was get past the perception that it was a gimmick. And I had shown it to someone who was in fashion at first, and his immediate feedback was like, oh, it's like a clip-on tie. And that was the first time I had heard that. And I thought, oh my God, I have to figure out how to get around that objection. And then I gave him a shirt and he wore it for a little while and he came back to me and said, this shirt is incredible. And so I thought, okay, so this guy's first impression was that it's a clip-on tie. And then after he had it, he thought it was incredible. So, we created very early on a North Star for our brand, which has actually become our slogan, which is the best fitted shirt on the planet. And so we didn't set out to just make a shirt that had a zipper or a shirt that we also have a patented collar on our shirt, a shirt that has a patented collar that doesn't fall down. We set out to create the best fitted shirt on the planet. And so if you want to create the best shirt, you have to start with quality. And so we really kind of lean into quality. We use premium fabrics and materials. We have a custom designed zipper that we teamed up with YKK to produce for our shirt. And all of our stuff is handmade. And so we used single needle tailoring. So Carl, my partner, has a background in custom shirting. So we kind of brought a lot of custom shirting manufacturing elements to the shirt. So we use single needle tailoring and flat felled seams, which keeps the shirt super strong at the seams. And so when people get the shirt, if they know what they're looking at, they can feel the fabric. And then when they put it on, they can feel that it's quality. And that's the most important thing for us, because this is what gets people, this and the fit is what gets people to reorder. And I think, so we kind of lean on that story, the fit and the quality story. So, we say, and also the novelty part of it. So if the shirt is patented, we have a design patent on the shirt, and the collar we have a utility patent on the collar. So we say it's a patented, handmade, premium quality, athletic cut, so on and so forth. But we lead with those other things before we get to the zipper.
Yeah, so I think getting people to reorder the product has to be superb, where people want to buy it. So the fit and quality makes sense once they get it for the first time and realize, wow, let me buy more of these shirts. What about that first time? Like, what do you find that you mentioned leaning on the fit and quality and the story and novelty and the patented the technology that's involved is all helpful? Is that like just like you writing the text? Is it reviews? What is it exactly that you find helpful for people to try it for the first time?
Yeah, that's a great. So normally, unless it's word of mouth, the way that people or Kickstarter, the way that people encounter us for the first time is through digital ads, and we do almost all of our customer acquisition is done on Facebook and Instagram. And so the nice thing about our product is it is demonstrable and it works very well in videos. And so in those videos, we try to touch on and show, we show and tell, how the shirt is different. First of all, that the shirt looks normal. That's another part of it that's very important, because men especially are not willing to try something new if they're going to look weird in it. And then what problems it solves and the benefits of wearing the shirt.
Hey, real quick, if you're enjoying the show, please leave us a review on iTunes to let us know what you think or what you'd like to hear more of. Now, let's get back to the interview. Got it. Makes sense. Now, I want to talk about something you mentioned a while ago around all the different things you're doing, right? You mentioned you had a restaurant, you ended up closing down, you launched you work in a tech product, the clothing brand that was getting off the ground, you were a bartender and DJ, so many different things going on. I think it's a situation that a lot of entrepreneurs are in, where they're just trying to kind of balance everything or dip their toe in a bunch of different things to see what kind of sticks. So what's your method for determining, what you should kind of close down versus what you think is worth kind of investing more of your focus and your time into?
So the bartending and DJing thing truly was just to pay the bills. It was something that I knew how to do, having been I used to be a bar and nightclub owner in New York before the restaurant in Miami. And I learned how to bartend there, and I learned how to DJ by kind of coaching my DJs in the places. And I needed to have some money coming in so I could pay the bills so that I could push my projects forward. And then the other thing is, so this was another job that I had was, I lived in a 3-bedroom apartment in New York. And once my roommates moved out, I started renting the spare bedrooms on Airbnb. And Airbnb, I found out in the next, years or so, is kind of like the quote unquote dirty little secret behind the startup world, or was in New York at the time, because every single person who I was in the startup community with was renting at least one of their bedrooms on Airbnb. And so that was covering my rent. If I was lucky, I was making money on top of that. And then I started managing other people's spare bedrooms on Airbnb as well, turned it into a little business. And I had someone working with me doing that. So that became almost automated. So now I had a semi-automated income coming in from these Airbnb things. And then I was able to stop bartending and only DJ. And then eventually I was able to stop DJing altogether once the shirt company started making enough money to pay my bills as well. So, I think that you have to have like that main thing that you're making money off of. For me, it was bartending, DJing, and then eventually it was some Airbnb stuff. And then you're pushing your dream forward with the money that you're getting from the things that you're using to make money. And to be honest with you, it's a juggle. It's a grind. And that's, I think most entrepreneurs, like, we didn't go out and raise money. Perhaps we could have, but I didn't want to give up equity in the company until it was doing a significant amount of business, because I thought I'd be giving it away for less than it was worth. And so, anytime I meet a fellow entrepreneur who's done it, like, we all kind of like, we know, like, yeah, you paid your dues.
So it sounds like you kind of just like smell where these opportunities are, money-making opportunities, and kind of just try them out. Do you ever say no and let me focus on other stuff, or I can't divert my focus too much? Or back in those early days, if there's an opportunity, you were on it?
No, 100%. I mean, I think it's really important. I think that actually the things that you decide not to do are sometimes as important, if not more important, than things you decide to do. So that restaurant that I opened in Miami, that was a very bad decision. I should have decided in hindsight not to do it. It was underfunded. There were lots of different reasons why I shouldn't have done it. And so, yes, I do say no to things. And frankly, my bandwidth is not very big. So if I'm taking up something with something that's not useful, it prevents me from moving the better things forward.
Yeah. So, was this something you had to learn, like a muscle you had to learn, or to work rather to develop, or because I think this is like the challenge, right? Entrepreneurs are typically ambitious and have big goals, big dreams, and they're going out to tackle them. But it's also this kind of mode of thinking that kind of makes you want to take on anything and everything as much as possible. And over time, there's this just need to focus more. Otherwise, you're going to be spread too thin, like the bandwidth issues that you're talking about. Did you have to develop this, or how did you get better at saying no to stuff?
So, it's funny. I don't know if you're familiar, you probably are, with the concept of feature creep, which is when you're designing a product and you keep adding new things to it. So like with the shirt, like, oh, well, now what if we put a pocket over here, or we put something over here, and we put a place for you to keep your, iPhone or whatever. And all of a sudden, like, you have this thing that you keep adding things onto, and then it becomes something different from what it originally was supposed to be. And it's confusing. And so I had been through a number of, projects where we let feature creep kind of take over our project, and then we had to kind of dial it back. And so I learned, I guess, to only take things that were going to make the most impact and put them into your life and also into your product or your business. And so it was, now that you ask, it was definitely something that took time to develop, because I kind of have ADD, and shiny objects distract me, and especially if they have money attached to them. It's definitely something that I honed over the years.
Yeah. Now I want to talk about so once you launched the Kickstarter, you raised I think $95,000 on that campaign. Did things just start coming together at that point? Like talk to us more about when you started feeling okay, this iteration of the product makes sense now. We have a way to get it to the customers and explain the story in a way that helps them get it. When did you start feeling okay, this is now on a much better track?
It's interesting. It's a great question because no, the Kickstarter, it's funny. We sold almost $100,000 worth of shirts. And I think we had like 800 or so customers at the end of the Kickstarter. And for sure that over the next few years, we kind of leaned on those customers for revenue. But it didn't take off right away. Partially because I had other things going on. And it was still, even after the Kickstarter, a bit of a side project. But mainly because we couldn't crack the marketing. And so, Kickstarter is this incredible platform where there's this massive audience of people. And if you launch a product and it gains a little bit of traction or whatever, like you get a lot of eyes on it. But we couldn't figure out how to do that outside of Kickstarter. And again, because I was doing other things, I needed to have an agency help me with it because I couldn't do it myself. And it is really, and this is one of the things that I think could help new people in this field, is in this emerging field of digital advertising, there are so many people who talk a good game. And, what happens is, you start to realize they're very good at marketing their services, but not your product. And so we went through a bunch of misses with different agencies who just couldn't figure out how to market the product. And the problem was that, they would get a bunch of money up front and then they'd have a monthly retainer. And then the first month didn't get any traction, but they'd ask you for another month and you continued to pay. And then you were also paying for ads. And the amount of money that you were sinking into working with this agency was piling up. And then I would just get to a point where I was running out of money and I had to stop. And then I'd have to earn money, fill the coffers again, and push that boulder back up the hill and then look for another agency. And so what I realized was I needed to find an agency whose interests were aligned with my own, which was basically my only interests were selling my shirts, finding customers for my shirts at a price or cost that made sense. And so I finally found an agency, and actually there are quite a few of them out there now that work on this model, but back then you couldn't find it. An agency that was willing to work for a commission of all the sales that they that their ads had gotten us. And so now with my agency, I actually work with 2 marketing agencies, and these guys get paid on a sliding scale according to what the ROAS is. So the return on ad spend. When the return on ad spend is high, they get a higher percentage of our sales. When it's lower, they get a lower percentage of our sales. And once I found this agency to work on that contingency, that combined with the proper content allowed us to really take off. And but it took about 3 years to crack that nut.
Wow. So you still kind of believed in the mission this entire time, even though it was a big struggle for yourself financially, then also just that you couldn't get it to work for the company itself. What kept you going? Like what made, 3 years is a long time, and a lot of people will start a business and it doesn't seem to be getting, regardless, maybe it's not successful within a year, but just doesn't feel like it's getting traction within a year. And they're, let me go on to the next thing. And given your track record of kind of trying a bunch of different things out and the shiny object syndrome, what made you stick this out for 3 years?
One thing was I knew our product was awesome. I knew that people who bought our product loved it. And so keeping those 2 things in mind, I knew that my biggest challenge was to figure out how to get it into the hands of people who were going to think our product was awesome. And really that was the main thing. So I was, and again, one of the reasons why it took so long is because I was DJing, bartending, running my Airbnb business, and, making enough money to do the next marketing push. And in addition to that, I was traveling. I love to travel, and I was living my life as well. And I was not desperate financially. If I had been a little bit more desperate, maybe it would have happened quicker, but I just knew I had something. And I just needed to figure out how to get it into people's hands that were going to agree with me.
And this is where the marketing agency came in. The first one you had mentioned, which I think you mentioned to us that you almost went broke by working with this initial marketing agency. And I think you talked about how back then there wasn't this model, commission-based model. Do you find that that's, I guess nowadays when other entrepreneurs are looking for help with their marketing, what are some of the either green or red flags they should pay attention to make sure that it is going to be aligned with their interests and a good fit?
What I would recommend, and it's hard at the beginning of launching a product because you don't have a track record you can point to with the marketing agency. But I think that if a marketing agency or even other vendors, so we work with our content creators as well. So the people who make our videos, they get paid on a commission basis too. So if they create an ad that ends up getting us a lot of sales, they get paid more for that ad. And if the ad is a dud, then they get paid less for it. But if you are looking for a marketing agency and the marketing agency is not willing to work on this commission type basis, it tells you something either A, about their confidence in being able to sell your product. I mean, I think that it definitely tells you that. Or B, it tells you something possibly about your product. And so, anytime you give a company or a vendor an opportunity to make money, if they see the opportunity, they're going to take it. So if they're not taking it, they're either just interested in kind of taking your money, jumping through a few hoops and then saying it didn't work, or they don't believe in your product. And that doesn't mean your product isn't going to work or that your brand isn't good. It just means that you have to figure out how to communicate why it is going to work or why it is good to the next marketing agency, because eventually you're going to have to communicate that to the world anyway. So your first job is selling a marketing agency on taking it on a commission basis.
Yeah, and I was going to say that. So not only is your agency working on this model, but then also a lot of the kind of contractors you've hired or that you work with also are working on this model. Is it a hard thing to convince people that there's like a sure, hey, paycheck, every single paycheck is the same, versus now there is a potential where you might make nothing or make way more than your paycheck? Is it a hard thing to get others on board with?
Yes, it is, especially if we're talking about at the beginning. So one of the reasons why the first marketing agency that agreed to work this way agreed to do it is because I could point to the Kickstarter campaign and say, hey, look, $95,000 in sales. If you communicate the message well and target it well, that you're going to get some sales. So they looked at that and they said, yeah, you're right. So, I think that at the outset, it's very difficult to do if you don't have something that you can point to. I almost always, when I talk to people who are starting businesses, online businesses with a product, I always recommend that they do some sort of Kickstarter because, if you can't get people who you don't know to buy your product, you don't have a business. And Kickstarter is the easiest, kind of lowest friction way to put your product out to the world without, sinking a ton of money into it. So it's a good way to test things out. Even 7 years later, Kickstarter is good for that.
Yeah, and was the messaging different between the Kickstarter that you had put together and the agency that you ended up working with that had a lot of interest? Like, did they discover new ways to kind of talk about and sell the product?
Actually, it's funny that you should say that, because what I discovered after going through, I think we had worked with 3 separate agencies before we found this other one. What I realized is these guys, the first agencies were showing still photos of the product. They were doing all this different stuff. And I thought, hey, wait a second. We have this Kickstarter video that was compelling enough to get people to buy $95,000 worth of shirts. Why don't we run this video? We kind of retrofit it so it wasn't a Kickstarter video where at the end I say, will you support our campaign? We retrofit it and turned it into an ad. And so basically our first significant customers that came from online advertising were seeing the same pitch as our Kickstarter customers.
That makes a lot of sense. What went into that video? Do you remember what about the video just worked well to sell the shirts?
Yeah, I think so. I'm a big believer in storytelling whenever you can. And I knew that the origin story of the brand happens to be kind of interesting. It's unexpected. It takes people to a foreign land, and there's police involved, like you said. And so I basically made a video that told that story, and then talked about the product and stuff. When I created that video, I kind of thought about it as if I were creating a YouTube video where people can just press skip ad after 5 seconds. So you want to capture their attention right away. And that's what I did. In the first 5 seconds, I set it up so that it was like, okay, hey, I'm going to tell you this story. And then maybe you get people to watch the next 5 seconds. And if you're interesting enough, then they'll watch the next 5 seconds. And so I think if you can tell a story, an interesting story, then that's what you should do.
Makes sense. Now I want to talk about the times. Fast forward a bit to now launching new products. So you're not just launching products and just huge batches and leave them kind of hanging on your site for forever. Talk to us about your releasing a strategy for new shirts. Yeah,
that's a good question. So we do have what I would call an evergreen collection. So, in the background of our brand is running these shirts that you'll always be able to get. So if you like our white Oxford, you're always going to be able to get our white Oxford. Everybody's going to need light blue shirts, black shirts, so on and so forth. But we test new products and we're lucky to work, the factory we work with, by the way, they're in Istanbul, and it took a little while to find them as well, but they are really incredible. They are not just making our shirts, but they're helping me find new materials, identify color trends, and so on and so forth. And they're very smart fashion-wise as well. And they are willing to do small batches. Actually, every one of our shirts, even the evergreen ones, are made in small batches. So we almost never make more than, say, 100 to 200 shirts at a time. But they can do batches as small as, say, 25 shirts. So if we want to try this new plaid out, or if we want to try out a Western shirt, or a short sleeve, whatever it is that we want to give it a shot, we can do small batches. And what's really cool about the small batches is that it gives our existing customers something to be excited about or look forward to, a reason to open our emails. And then it allows us to see, like, how quickly did this thing sell? What's the feedback from the people who bought it? And we might run another small batch on the same shirt if it was moderately successful the first time around. And if it's a runaway success, then we may end up adding it into the evergreen collection. And so, the small batch program allows us to test new things, but it also allows us to get our customers excited about something that's limited edition and new. And it works.
Yeah, and what's the process for launching these kind of small, like, test batches? Do you just promote it through your email list? Like, what's the way to get out to your potential customers as soon as possible?
Yeah, it's all, so our customer acquisition comes through the Facebook and Instagram marketing, and we're going to start doing some YouTube stuff soon. But all of our other sales, when we launch new things and so on and so forth, this is all through email. So, over the years, we've amassed a pretty big list of customers and people who've just signed up to be on the email list. And of course, we segment those lists into VIPs. Those are people who've purchased many times, regular customers, people who haven't bought yet and stuff. And yes, that's how we roll it out. We roll out the small batches through email. And we have a pretty good open rate.
Yeah. And does this get expensive? Because I'm assuming these smaller batches, anything smaller in manufacturing is going to cost more per unit. Is that something that you just accept and as a way to test things out, or are there ways around it to make sure that it's still economical?
No. So first of all, it's hard to find factories that will do stuff like that for you. And so again, we are lucky to be working with the factory we're working with, but it is more expensive. So they charge more to manufacture it. And also when you buy fabric at a lower quantity, it costs more per meter. And so they are more expensive, but we kind of bake it into the system. It brings the average price of our shirt up, our cost of our shirt up. But we roll with the small batch shirts. They're slightly more expensive than the stuff that's normally in stock. So we pass part of that expense on to the consumer. And because they're exclusive and they're small batch, people don't seem to mind paying a little bit more for it.
Makes sense. Now talk a little about the website. You had mentioned the email was a big thing that you were using. Are there any specific apps that you use for email, or just in general, any apps that you rely on to run the business?
Yeah. So we use our email app is Klaviyo. And we had someone go in and program flows for us. So you have the cart abandonment, the welcome to the site thing, and so on and so forth that kind of go out automatically. And then every time we have a new release, that's actually something that generally either I or Rachel, who's a consultant who works for us, actually it's just kind of roll this back. I'm the only full-time employee, if you could even consider me an employee at the company. And so everything that we do is outsourced. And and our outsourcers are really our team, and we know them very well. So even Rachel, who's like my right-hand person, knows the brand and the company better than anyone besides myself. She's actually has her own digital consulting agency, and she works part-time for us. And then, our customer service people, and of course the factory and our digital agencies. And we work with a conversion rate optimization firm as well. Everything's outsourced, but we have close relationships with everybody. So Klaviyo is great. The basics are Klaviyo. We use Return Magic, which is awesome. And also Shopify acquired Return Magic. And we are actually using Shopify fulfillment network. So all of our stuff is fulfilled by Shopify. We got accepted into the beta program. And so, it's great because like Shopify and our fulfillment center, everybody's interests are aligned because it's owned by Shopify. And then Return Magic makes it easy because it hooks up to Shopify fulfillment network really well. The apps that we use also, one of them is called Inventory Planner. And this one is really good because part of the thing about online business, and especially when you don't have a ton of money to throw at inventory, is you find yourself like running out of things, and you have to make it, and it's hard to forecast it because if one of your ads is working really well, you might deplete a certain product quicker than you thought you were going to, and so on and so forth. And so the owner of the factory that we work with is also a systems guy, and he has taken this app Inventory Planner and kind of done some programming around it that essentially every month creates an automated order for everything that we need to replenish. So I can't say enough about Inventory Planner if you learn how to run it. And then the other one that we use is called Judge Me. And Judge Me is a reviews app. And we had previously been working with another company that was great, but they had all these features on it that we weren't using. And as a result, they were super expensive. We were spending like 13 or 14 grand a year on this, working with this other app. And then we found Judge Me, which was actually recommended by our developer. And it's like, night and day. It's basically free, and it does just as much stuff as the other app did, which again, probably doesn't do just as much stuff, but we weren't using those kind of ancillary things. So I would recommend Judge Me wholeheartedly for reviews.
Can you tell us more about what is conversion rate optimization and how you've used it to grow the business?
So the single biggest change that we made this year was that we rethemed our website. That's the biggest change that we made to the site. But the thing that we did that made the biggest impact on revenue was we started working with this CRO company called Mobile First. And CRO stands for Conversion Rate Optimization. And Mobile First is a good name because about 80% of our customers are visiting and buying on mobile phones. So what the CRO company does is they come in and they look at the website and they identify different changes that can be made that might have an impact on revenue. And some of the changes are really small, but what they do is they A/B test the change. And if it's statistically significant, we make the change to the website. And so obviously the goal is to increase conversions and then also increase average order value. And so, for example, a couple of the things that they did was on the homepage, they put images of the products right below the hero image. We had previously had a bunch of value props right below the hero image. And that turned out to be significantly better than how we had it. So we made that change. And then we did have run in a year about 19 tests, and about 11 of them came back as statistically significantly better. And we made those changes. And with these little incremental changes, when we first started working with them, our conversion rate was around 2%, which is not horrible, but it's also not great. And now today, for the year, we're up to 3.15%. And for the last 2 months, it's 3.45%. So it's made a huge impact. Our average order value has gone up by about 20% as well. So when I do the math of the impact of working with this company, for us, at least where we are, it resulted in about $600,000 in sales. So this was absolutely huge. And I had really been skeptical about working with a company like this before. But I can tell you, at least with this company, because they do know what they're doing, it really does make a huge impact.
Awesome. So teddystratford.com is the website where all of this is going on. And I leave you this last question. What do you think is going to be your top focus over the next year?
So in 2022, we have a bunch of different things happening. One of them is we're launching our women's line. So women actually have a much bigger, kind of more quote unquote painful problem with the gapping between the buttons. You can see their bra, and a lot of women don't wear button-down shirts just because of this. So we're going to be launching the women's line early 2022. And then we also have taken our fit ratio for men and applied it to T-shirts. And we're going to be launching our T-shirts as well. Yeah, because of the improvement in the way that our inventory is being managed, I think we'll be able to scale a lot this year. I'm hoping to grow 100 to 200%.
Amazing. So thank you so much, Brian, for coming on and sharing all of your experience and advice.
Yeah, thank you, Felix. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Shopify Masters, the e-commerce podcast for ambitious entrepreneurs powered by Shopify.